Because of this, Noah stayed in Tate's life too long. That became the complication I didn't know how to solve, because I could have left. I knew I could have. The plan was intact in theory. Everything was still there waiting for me, the distance, the reinvention, the life I had rehearsed in my head for years. But every time I tried to imagine actually stepping into it, I kept seeing the absence that would come with it. Not of my family, not of my father's expectations. Those parts were easier to detach from. It was Noah's absence that made it difficult. The idea of continuing my life without him in it didn't feel like moving forward. It felt like leaving something unfinished in a way I couldn't justify to myself, even if I couldn't fully explain why. So I stayed, not because the plan disappeared, but because I couldn't separate the plan from him anymore without feeling like something essential was being removed in the process. And that realization changed everything that came after it, even the parts I still tried to pretend were unaffected. When I was 18 in 1986, Noah was a dumb cunt who had a fixation on me. That was his unfortunate choice. I'd never cared about it as long as it didn't interrupt my plans. I had no idea how much Noah's devotion would cost us. Only in my 20s would I realize what I'd sacrifice and risk for that dumb cunt. I need to get rid of him before I attend Princeton in the fall. Shove him away, claim what's mine financially from my trust, and take everything I deserve. Ever since I was 4 years old, I've had a sneaky, self-centered plan to leave everything and everyone, including Noah, behind. The second I turn 22 and graduate college, I can gain my inheritance from my bastard dead grandfather's will. I wanted to leave the US and join my fiancé in Paris, but then that plan changed when I was 15 and he attacked me. I realized when I was 13 how bad the relationship with Jay was, so I abandoned that idea of Paris and decided I would live in Europe abroad by myself after I graduated from college. I watched Noah sleep small and quiet beneath me, and my chest twisted in ways I couldn't name. My heart swelled. I loved him, but not in the way most people thought of love. It was platonic, yes, but it was everything to me. It was the kind of love that demanded his presence, that worshipped his goodness, and made his happiness feel like the axis of my own world. No one, including oblivious, naive Noah, knows that I am emotionless, narcissistic, a manipulative sociopath, and why I became those things. How that love started, why I needed Noah so completely, why we shared a bed for 22 years before Chloe can never be revealed. From the moment we were toddlers, I had sought him out, made him essential to me, leaned on him, relied on him, shaped my world around him, and somehow convinced myself it was as much for him as it was for me. And yet, I couldn't shake the guilt. I knew I had taken advantage of his trust, of his innocence, of the way he loved me simply because I existed in his life. I had leaned into it too far, made him feel needed in ways that were really meant to serve me. Every time he laughed, every time he confided in me, every time he rested against me with complete faith in my presence, I felt both warmth and shame. I used him until we were 8. I depended on him. And he didn't know. Noah didn't know why, because he couldn't know. I had lied to him every day, not with words of malice, but with omissions, with silences, with letting him believe that everything about us was natural, mutual, and equal. And while he trusted me, while he felt safe with me, I carried the weight of how much I had shaped that trust to my advantage. "I love you," my heart whispered in the dark, but I couldn't say it out loud, not the way I truly meant it, not the way it would have revealed the dependence, the vulnerability, and the need for him that had built over the years. He didn't notice. He never did. Noah was my special person. His family who left him alone, his self and his future I envied but could never achieve. I stayed silent, pressed close to him, letting my devotion and my guilt swirl together in the quiet of the night. I loved him, yes, but I also feared him leaving, feared the emptiness I would feel without him. And so I kept him close, silently, protectively, selfishly, always needing him, and always holding him as though he were the only anchor I had in the world. And the truth of why I loved him, of how deeply I depended on him, that would remain a secret forever. Everything I did, every touch and word, was a temptation for him to stay. I couldn't survive if he weren't here. I remember that dark time before Lowe's Angels, and I shivered thinking of how Noah made everything better and safer. I was careful with it and reckless at the same time. I told myself I was just being a good buddy, being steady, just being there. But underneath it all was the truth I never said out loud. I couldn't survive if he wasn't here. That knowledge lived in me like a quiet panic. And then there was Noah, sweet, cute, devoted, and loyal. Noah had made everything better, safer, not because he tried to fix anything, but because his presence softened the edges of the world. He laughed easily. He trusted completely. He made the quiet feel less dangerous just by existing beside me. I told myself I wasn't trapping him. I told myself he stayed because he wanted to, but still, I measured my words, softened my tone, and stayed close enough that leaving would feel wrong. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I was terrified of being alone again with my sadistic father and monstrous relatives. I can't go back to that, I thought, the memory tightening my chest. I won't survive it, so I stayed gentle. I stayed constant. I stayed necessary, and every time he smiled at me like I was safety itself, I felt both relief and shame because I knew how much I needed him to believe that. Jay and I had come up with a plan called Chernobyl. If the fake life we lived, the family truth, or our loneliness became too much to bear, we would both commit a murder-suicide so we wouldn't have to deal with the reality of being a blue anymore. Noah's presence changed everything. It made me not want to die, and that's why I fled the pickup Jay drove, because I wanted to live and not harm Noah any more than I had. Without Noah, I wouldn't be alive. Without Jay, I wouldn't have lived long enough to meet Noah. Noah was naive, witless, completely crazy about me, in love, and desperately beholden to me. I'd led him on, carefully, almost desperate to be near me. I felt guilty about breadcrumbing him for 13 years. It was easier to lie and say I loved him, to let him believe it was equal and natural, than to admit the truth. Hell, I didn't want him, I needed him. Any presence would have sufficed, a nameless, faceless body, but Noah's presence, his breathing, his innocence made life bearable. He made it possible to sleep late at night without that gnawing emptiness pressing against me. I knew what I was doing, and still I couldn't stop. Every gesture, every laugh I encouraged, every reassurance I offered, it was all part of keeping Noah here, keeping him anchored to me, not for love in the usual sense, but for survival, for my own safety in a world that always felt too wide, too dark, too empty. And the worst part, he had no clue. 14 years of trust, of faith in me, of being crazy about me, and I had molded it to my own need. I could almost convince myself it was mutual, almost. But deep down I knew that my love wasn't selfless. It wasn't about him at all, it was about me. And yet somehow I couldn't imagine life without him. I narrowed it down to a number, a date. Noah could stay until I turned 22, until the trust was mine, until the money was finally out of my family's hands and in my own. After that, my money and my ass would relocate clean and permanent to Europe, where the Blue family couldn't reach me. No forwarding address, no explanations, no goodbyes. I told myself it was practical, that this was just logistics, just endurance to escape an abusive life. I only had to hold him here a little longer, keep him steady, keep him believing. Let him think we were solid, familiar, and unbreakable. Let him trust me while I quietly count down the days. Once I left Los Angeles, I'd never see Noah again. I'd never see my family again either. America would become something abstract, something finished. I'd make myself invisible to everyone who ever thought they knew me. That was the plan I clung to when the guilt got loud. I convinced myself Noah would survive my absence, that he'd rebuild, that my absence would eventually blur into something survivable. I told myself I wasn't cruel, I was just temporary, necessary only for a season, but lying there, listening to his breathing, I knew the truth I refused to name. I wasn't just asking him to stay until 22, I was asking Noah to give me the best parts of his loyalty while I prepared to disappear forever. And I let him do it, every single day. Once I had my 600 million trust on my 22nd birthday, no one I currently knew could or would be around me again. Money doesn't just buy distance, it enforces it. Financial options turn bad, untrustworthy people into shadows you can step past without consequence. I wasn't fond of my parents. I hated my sadistic, abusive father and despised my silent, enabling mother with a consistent fury. My mom had no idea why I hated her, she never would. It was years before I realized, Talia hadn't a clue why. My monstrous family was obligations dressed up as family, voices that only grew louder when control slipped. Leaving them behind felt less like loss and more like relief. And Noah was a sucker, that was the ugliest truth. He believed everything he was told by me because he wanted to, because believing made him feel safe, because trusting me was easier than questioning why I needed him so badly. I took advantage of that. I let his faith in me do the heavy lifting while I planned my escape. I told myself he stayed because he chose to, not because I made it feel impossible for him to leave. By the time the money was mine, I'd be untouchable, unreachable. Gone. Noah, my parents, this country, everything reduced to something I used to know. And still, even knowing all of that, I didn't stop. Because needing someone is easier when you convince yourself they're foolish for loving you. Ever since I was young, I'd been called an asshole by the ignorant, intolerant, oblivious people I knew. Maybe I am. Noah certainly seemed to think so, especially after he turned 18 and hadn't let up since we met in preschool. Growing up with that kind of scrutiny changes you. I was born in New York City, but after my 4th birthday my well-off family moved across the country to Southern California, somewhere near Los Angeles. The city had its own rhythm, fast and loud, but LA was sprawling and sun-blinded, its heat baking into every street corner and playground. Moving to California was a change in more ways than one. All my family was still in New York City, and I rarely saw anyone I knew except on birthdays, weekends, or at Christmas. I was an introvert by nature, which didn't exactly help me make friends in a new place where everyone else seemed to already know each other. My mom was nice, kind, patient, but the kids she tried to set me up with were often frightful. After the third bully darkened our doorstep, I learned a simple solution: hide. I would curl up under my bed, refusing to acknowledge their existence, pretending the world outside my little cocoon didn't exist. Wayne taught me that choosing the wrong friend could be catastrophic to my goals. Eventually, my mom gave up trying to push me into the social fray. Instead, she found parks where I could play with my toys while she watched from a bench near the swings. It was quiet, safe, and predictable, a world I could control. And in those moments, with plastic figures scattered around me and the warm sun overhead, I began to understand what it meant to be invisible and at the same time wholly myself. The first day of preschool was terrifying. I clutched my mom's legs, begging, "Take me home, I just want to be in my room." She knelt down, brushing my hair back gently. "You're going to try to make new friends," she said. "I'll be back at 1 in the afternoon to pick you up, I promise." She hugged me tight, pressed her cheek against mine, and kissed the top of my head. "I love you," she whispered. "Be brave, okay?" I sniffled, nodded, but didn't let go. When she finally stepped back and got into the car, she waved, blowing me one last kiss before driving away. All morning I cried in the homeroom, my tears soaking the sleeve of my shirt as I clutched my little backpack. But I wasn't alone. Across the room, other children sniffled and whimpered, tugging at their parents' hands or hiding behind small chairs. Separation anxiety was the rule that day, not the exception. Somehow, that made it a little easier to breathe. I wasn't the only one lost in a room full of strangers. Nap time was worse. I hated taking naps. My mind was a battleground for terrible dreams, monsters, dragons, or shadowy figures that crept in behind closed eyelids. I could feel them even before I drifted off, turning the soft cot beneath me into a stage for my worst fears. I missed my Uncle Joey, who was the only one in my frightful family who gave a damn about me. Miss Stone, our teacher, was kind. She seemed to enjoy working with kids like me, troubled, introverted, or preferring corners and toys to the chaos of classmates. She knelt by my cot, smoothing my hair back and whispering gentle reassurances. "It's okay," she said. "You're safe here, just rest your eyes for a little while." I flinched when she touched my hair. I hated it when adults touched me. Playing with toys was fine, at least in the relative safety of my little world. But being around strangers, other kids with unfamiliar faces, strange voices, sudden movements made my anxiety spike. Every shuffle of feet, every shouted name, every accidental elbow against my arm felt magnified, as if the room itself was closing in. Nap time wasn't just uncomfortable, it was terrifying. Lunch came and I chose a small table where I could observe without being crowded. My mom had packed me a tiny snack of fruit and I clutched the container like a lifeline. I was picky, and fruit was one of the few things I could manage away from home. I sprinkled a little cinnamon on top, as I always did. It made the fruit taste different better, somehow, and the familiar spice brought a small comfort to an otherwise overwhelming day. Across the table, a small boy my age was eating a sandwich. He was small, nerdy, shy, and lacked self-confidence. This kid might work, but I needed more information. Tentatively, I walked over. "Can I sit down?" I asked. He nodded without looking up. "I'm Tate," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "No," he replied, quiet, almost sulky. "I want to go home," I admitted before I could stop myself. "Same," he muttered, pushing a bit of his sandwich around with his finger. "What's on your sandwich?" I asked, hoping to make some kind of connection. "Ham on rye," he said. I nodded, studying him. He was small like me, but there was something, an edge, a stubbornness that made me uneasy and curious all at once. I watched him nibble his sandwich. "Do you like cinnamon?" I asked. "Not sure," he said, scrunching his nose. "It tastes weird." "Not weird," I argued. "It's yummy." "Okay," he said, sticking out his tongue. But then he sneaked a look at my fruit and whispered, "Can I try some?" I handed him a piece. He bit into it and made a face. Then slowly he smiled. Okay," he said. "See, yummy," I said, grinning. He nodded. "I like your hair," he added. "Thanks," I said. "I like your sandwich." We ate in quiet chunks, talking about trains, monsters, and swings. Sometimes we argued. "No, that's my truck," but we always laughed. By the time lunch was over, I realized something. Even though I wanted to go home, I didn't feel as scared anymore. Noah didn't make everything safe, but somehow he made it bearable. Just like that, in our clumsy, tiny 4-year-old way, we became friends. We spent every day of preschool together, always sitting at our usual lunch table. On the third day, I leaned over my snack and asked, "Noah, do you want to be friends?" "Yeah," he said, shrugging like it was obvious. A week after meeting him, I tugged on my mom's sleeve. "Mom, can he come to our house on Friday for a sleepover?" She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Yes, dear, that would be wonderful," she kissed my cheek. "Of course, provided his mom drops him off and I get to meet her." I nodded eagerly, imagining toys spread across the living room, laughter bouncing off the walls. For the first time since moving to California, it felt like things might be okay. Noah's mom's old Ford rumbled up our driveway at 4 on Friday. Noah climbed out wearing the oldest, threadbare clothes I'd ever seen, even older than school. I didn't care. He slung a knapsack over his left shoulder and carried a red sleeping bag in his right, bouncing it slightly. Uncle Joey stood next to Talia and his nephew, rubbing Tate's hair, smirking at the poor people who were arriving up their driveway. I ran ahead. "Come on, I saved my trucks for us," I called, hazel eyes sparkling. Noah grinned, full of that mischievous energy I already knew. "Hope they're fast trucks," he said, "'cause I'm the fastest." Even then, I realized this wasn't going to be quiet, but I didn't mind, with Noah here. It was going to be fun. "He won't be any trouble," his mom said to mine. "He's quiet and obedient, mostly keeps to himself." I tugged at Noah's hand. "Come on, I'll show you my room first." Noah grinned, slung his sleeping bag over his shoulder. "Race you." We tore into the house, boots thumping. I led him to my room, lined with trucks, action figures, and blocks. "Whoa," he said, dropping his knapsack. "That's a lot of stuff." "Mine," I said firmly, holding up a small race car. "But you can play too." "No way, I get the red pickup truck," he countered, snatching it before I could blink. "Hey, that's mine," I shouted, lunging. We wrestled, then froze and grinned. 4-year-olds didn't need rules. Fights ended in laughter. Eventually, we plopped down, breathing heavily. Noah yawned and rolled out his sleeping bag. "Do you sleep with trucks too?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "only the fastest ones." He nodded, curling up. "Okay, you can have the race cars, I'll sleep here." That night in my family's home, with the unfamiliar noises of a new house and the excitement of a sleepover, I realized something. Having Noah here, even though he was small, blonde, blue-eyed, and unpredictable, made everything feel braver, funnier, and a little less lonely. "You can put your sleeping bag on that chair," I offered. Noah smiled, then plopped to the floor. I laughed. "Where do you live, Noe?" I asked. "In a small trailer park near the outskirts," he said quietly. "It's not much. My dad died years ago and my mom, she drinks and works all day." "Sorry," I said softly. "It's okay," he said, shrugging. "What about you?" "My parents are socialites. I'm left on my own unless I'm at school. My Uncle Joey's nice, Talia is busy, and my dad works all the time. Joey's sweet. He lets me do anything I want. We'll be able to play unbothered for hours in the basement or in my room." We lay there, the afternoon sunlight slanting through the blinds. Despite our differences, his rough edges, my privileges, sharing this moment felt equal. Even at 4, we'd found our little space where nothing else mattered but trucks, toys, and laughter. We loved pizza. Noah always went for Hawaiian, extra pineapple. I used to laugh about it. No wonder people teased him about being fruity, I thought, and I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. He looked at me, confused for half a second, then smiled anyway, like my laughter was enough of an explanation. That smile always landed wrong in my chest. He really was simple, sweet, oblivious in a way that felt almost protective, like the world hadn't managed to rough him up yet. I told myself that meant he'd be fine, that a kid like him would always land on his feet. And the truth I never said out loud followed close behind that thought. If he liked me, the more useful Noe was to me. Useful in his loyalty, in his consistency, in the way he stayed without needing to be asked, the way he filled space just by existing beside me. I walked him eat his pizza, completely at ease, trusting me without question, and I felt that familiar mix of relief and disgust at myself for using a small, innocent child to feel safe in my circumstances. I let him have an extra slice of pizza, Perhaps he'd like me more and come back tomorrow. No, he didn't know he was being measured. He didn't know his affection had become currency. He didn't know how carefully I encouraged it. I told myself it wasn't cruelty. I told myself I wasn't hurting Noah. After all, he was smiling. Noe was happy. He believed everything between us was simple, and maybe that was the worst part. 4 years later, when we were 8, Noah was still a dumb cunt in love with me. That was his mistake. He trusted too easily, believed too deeply, and followed me without question. I hadn't asked Noah to cling to me, and yet he did. 13 years of loyalty and unquestioning faith, and he gave it freely, thinking it meant something permanent. I let him believe it. I encouraged it. I shaped it to suit my own needs. And I hadn't a clue for many years to come how his decision to follow me would come to haunt us both. I thought it was temporary, that it was a means to an end, my end. Keep him near until I had what I wanted, until I could disappear into a life I had meticulously planned. Europe. Distance, invisibility, no one to watch, to judge, to tether me to the past. I told myself it was survival, that I wasn't cruel, that he would be fine, and for a while maybe he was. Nothing remains simple when one person depends entirely on another. Noah's presence had become a constant in my life, a rhythm I didn't even realize I relied on. The more he believed in me, the more I relied on him in return. His innocence, blind trust made life bearable, but it also made him vulnerable. And that vulnerability, which I used for my own safety and comfort, would eventually ripple outward in ways neither of us could control. I couldn't see it then. I only saw what I needed. Noe staying with me, breathing, believing, and living as if our world were balanced. I couldn't know, not yet, that the very thing that made him perfect for me, his unthinking loyalty, would one day be the source of both our undoing. Hell, Noah is wrong too if he thinks we're friends or lovers. I lie by omission every single day, hiding everything he can't know, why I chose him, why I've slept beside him for decades, why no one understands me or us, and why I can't be without him for one day. We sleep together and nothing happens, and that is the point. That has always been the point. The stillness, the certainty, the proof that I can keep him close without taking anything from him. I know he's probably convinced himself I'm in love with him, or that Noe has an affection for me. That's the story everyone tells themselves. It's the only language they have for this kind of devotion. But he's wrong. Everyone is wrong. I make him think the devotion I give him is love. I've never been in love with strangers. I never will be. I've only ever been in love with Jay. He saved me from my family by protecting us from Terrence. What I feel for Noe isn't desire. It isn't romance. It isn't longing for possession or completion. It's presence. It's constant. It's choosing the same person every day without needing them to change, perform, or give anything back. I sleep beside him because it quiets the world. Because knowing he's breathing, warm, real, within reach keeps everything else from collapsing. Because it reminds me that safety can exist without demand. I touch him often, an arm, a shoulder, or his hand, because touch grounds him and grounding him grounds me. I tell him I love Noe every day because it's true, and because saying it costs nothing while meaning everything to him and me. People hear it and think they know me, they think they understand us. No one gets it. And there's something almost amusing about watching them stumble over their own assumptions, trying to force us into a shape that makes sense to them. I'm not in love with Noah, I'm focused on girls, and homosexuality is wrong. Me touching Noah romantically will never happen. I gave my word to Terrence and Jay that Tate Blue would never sexually or romantically touch Noah Lunas while he lived in my father's house. Adults think we hide our romance in public and screw in private, but we don't. They don't see the discipline in it, the restraint, the devotion without consummation. They don't understand that love, as they define it, has nothing to do with this. I didn't choose Noah because I fell for him. I chose him because he became my constant, my measure, my anchor, and my home. I stayed because leaving Noe alone in my childhood home with my abusers was never an option. There is a dark space between us, a truth I will never cross into with risking Noe's safety. He can never know why we met in school, why I never moved on at any age, why every version of my future always included him without question. I protect that silence fiercely. I protect him that way. This is not romance. This is not friendship. This is not love as the world understands it. I married Chloe when I was 26 to protect Noe from my father's expectations and revenge. Noe's presence in my life is permanence, and I will carry my secrets alone gladly for as long as I breathe. Everyone thinks they have figured me out. Most individuals I know think they understand us, Noah and me. No one is even close to why I need Noah every day near me and in my bed. People think my love for Noah is conventional, easy to know and label. Everyone thinks they have me figured out. Hell, most of the people in my life think they understand Noah and me. They watch the way we move around each other, the way I touch him without thinking, the way he fits beside me like it's always been his place, and they decide they've cracked the code. They think they're close. No one is even remotely close. They don't understand why I need Noah near me every single day. His presence steadies me in ways nothing else ever has. Why does my bed feel wrong, empty, or uninhabitable if he isn't in it? They assume it's comfort, habit, or intimacy dressed up as loyalty. They assume it's love in the way they recognize and understand. Easy, familiar, label ready. It isn't. Sleeping beside him isn't about desire, it's about knowing where he is, knowing he's safe, knowing I'm anchored. Nothing happening is the point, it always has been. If something did happen, it would cheapen it, flatten it into something explainable. I won't do that to us. I won't allow myself to be hurt by any man, and any perv who has designs on Noe will be destroyed by me. Strangers and friends think they see devotion and assume love. Rich fools think they see closeness between Noe and me and assume romance. They think they see permanence and assume fear. They are wrong on every count. No one understands why I chose him, why I never moved on, and why my life never expanded past the space where Noah exists, and I won't correct them. I let them misunderstand. I let them label. I let them feel clever. Jay is the only man who knows. Because the truth is quieter, heavier, darker, and far more dangerous than anything they've imagined. And it belongs to me alone. I've never been in love with strangers, I never will be. What I feel for Noe isn't desire, it isn't romance, it isn't longing for possession or completion. It's presence, it's consistency, it's choosing the same person every day without needing them to change, perform, or give anything back. I sleep beside Noah because it quiets the world. Because knowing he's breathing, warm, real, within reach keeps everything else from collapsing. Because it reminds me that safety can exist without demand. I say again to remind myself of this truth, they don't see the discipline in it, the restraint, the devotion without consumption. They don't understand that love, as they define it, has nothing to do with this. I didn't choose Noah because I fell for him. I chose him because he became my constant, my measure, my anchor, my home. I stayed because leaving was never an option. I'm straight. That part's simple enough. Terrence and the Blue family will never allow me to be anything but heterosexual. Everyone in LA believes I have an interest in Noe. I love him, but interest, that's another thing entirely. Unless it's for sex, I don't feel interest in anyone except for sex. And even then, it's mechanical, functional, a release, nothing more. No attachment, no hunger, and no lingering ache afterward. I don't look for connections there because I've never needed them. Whatever people think they see in me when it comes to women, they're projecting. They confuse availability with desire, confidence with longing. They assume there's a missing piece I'm trying to fill. There isn't. No already occupies the space they think is empty. That's what no one understands. They think intimacy has to follow a script. Attraction, romance, commitment, and love aren't allowed in the Blue family. Society thinks that wanting someone's body means wanting their life or needing the individual longer than the act takes. It doesn't. Not for me. Sex is easy. People are easy. That's exactly why none of it holds my attention. What I have with Noah isn't easy. It isn't obvious. It isn't consumable. It's fucking dangerous and treacherous, but I'm willing to risk everything to touch and hold him close. And that's why it matters. What Noah and I share is sacred and fragile. I'd never give anyone the satisfaction of us being lovers or more than friends. Noah isn't my friend but a gatekeeper holding back the dam, which threatens everyone I know, especially Noah. So I let people guess. I let them misread me. I let them decide I'm complicated, detached, or secretly something they can explain if they just look hard enough. It keeps them occupied. It keeps them away from the truth. And the truth is this: I don't need romance. I don't need love. I don't need anyone trying to claim me. I need Noe. I already chose where I belong. I don't want to stay the night after I fuck a girl. I never have. Once it's done, there's nothing left there for me to need. There's no pull, no reason to linger, and nothing I need to stay for. She's nothing to me, and whatever she offers less than I can buy. Conversation, warmth, reassurance, affection, it's all noise. Staying would be dishonest. Pretending their meaning would be worse. These girls are people, individuals who matter and have value, but I'm not looking for social validation through meaningless relationships and hetero public displays of affection. So I wait until the girl I've fucked is asleep, until the room goes quiet and heavy, until there's nothing left to explain. Then I slip out, dress in the dark, and leave without ceremony. I don't feel guilty. I feel relieved, because I'm not going away from something, I'm going back to where I belong. I return to my bed, to the place where someone is waiting for me. Noah is different. Noah has never been about taking anything from me. He needs my love, but he'll survive without it. He's about safety, about quiet, about the way the night settles when another body is near yours and asks nothing in return. I don't need him to talk. I don't need him to do anything at all. I just need his body near mine, the steady warmth, the certainty of his presence. That's perfect. That's enough. Noah isn't a taker, but a marvelous, attractive giver. I've never met a giver like Noah in my entire life except my fucking mother. Sleeping beside Noah every night isn't intimacy the way people understand it. It isn't a desire. It isn't romance. It's a regulation. It's grounding. It's the only way my mind ever truly shuts off. With him there, I don't have to perform, explain, or guard myself. I can exist. People think I confuse sex and attachment. They think I'm avoiding closeness. They're wrong. Sex is empty, Noah is full. Sex is movement, Noah is still. One passes through me without leaving a mark. The other has shaped my entire life. I never want sex to be anywhere near my relationship with Noah and me. Having sex or desiring sex with my male buddy would be traumatic. I don't stay the night with women because there's nothing waiting for me in the morning. With Noah, the night itself is the reason. The quiet, the safety, and the certainty that nothing needs to happen for everything to be exactly right. That's what I chose. That's what I return to every night, even from the beds of girls I finished fucking. I sleep beside him because it quiets the world. Because knowing he's breathing, warm, real, within reach keeps everything else from collapsing. Because it reminds me that safety can exist without demand. We had Hawaiian and sausage pizza for dinner, and afterward Noah and I played board games until midnight. "Your turn," I said, nudging him across the table. "No way," he groaned, moving his piece. "I'm totally going to lose again." "You say that every time," I teased. "Maybe you just like letting me win." "Yeah, right," he shot back with a smirk, "like I do that on purpose." By the time the game ended, I was exhausted. I climbed onto my twin mattress on the third floor, collapsing with a sigh. "You going to sleep already?" Noah asked, kneeling beside the bed as he unrolled his sleeping bag on the floor below me. "Yeah, it's late," I muttered, pulling the blanket up. He chuckled softly. "Don't let me snore too loudly," he said. "You snore," I laughed. "Hey, stranger things have happened," he said, settling in. The room fell quiet except for the soft rustle of the sheets, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "Hey," I called, hanging upside down off the edge of the bed. "Get up here, it's cold and the floor is hard." Noah shook his head. "My mom told me not to be a bother," he muttered, his voice muffled. I rolled my eyes. "You're not a bother, you're freezing down there. Nobody uses a sleeping bag on the floor in my room anymore." I thought of fucking Wayne, who ruined sleepovers in the blue house since last spring before we moved to LA. Noe groaned and shifted on the floor, finally inching closer to the mattress. "Fine, fine, but only because you're being annoying." I grinned. "See, that wasn't so hard." He crawled into bed with the light off, and I tensed instantly. "I can go back to the floor," he said, sensing my hesitation. "Nonsense," I replied, shoving the tight, nervous feeling in my stomach out of my head. "It's warm already, huh?" I joked, trying to sound casual. Noah's body was like a toaster oven, always hot and red. He chuckled softly, the sound low in the dark. "Yeah, warm," he murmured. "Do you ever dream about dragons or monsters?" Noah asked, reaching out to take my hand. His palm was warm against mine. "Every night," I admitted, a shiver running down my spine. "You." "Sometimes," he said, intertwining his fingers with mine for comfort. "Especially after reading those library books together on the basement couch." I smiled in the dark. "Guess we're both full of scary stories then." "Do you move around at night, or leave your bed while you're asleep?" I asked, curious. "Nope," Noah said with a laugh. "Mom says I don't snore or turn over in bed." "Lucky me," I teased. "I probably kick and flop like a fish." He squeezed my hand gently. "Yeah, you're probably a tornado in your sleep, but it's okay, I like being here." I swallowed, feeling my chest tighten, and let the warmth of his hand settle the rest of my nerves. Noah shifted closer and rested his head on my chest just as footsteps passed outside the room. My mother's voice floated in from the hallway, light and familiar, wishing us a good night. I held my breath until the sound faded. "Your heart is racing so fast, Tay," Noah giggled quietly. "It is not," I whispered back. "My head is shaking, see," he said, lifting it just enough to prove it. I looked down and sure enough, his head was rocking slightly side to side with every heartbeat. I couldn't help it, I laughed, clapping a hand over my mouth to keep quiet. "Okay, maybe a little," I admitted. Noah grinned in the dark and settled back against me, calmer now. After a moment, my heart slowed, matching the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The house went completely still, and for the first time that night I felt safe enough to close my eyes. "You're shivering," he whispered. "You cold." "Yeah," I admitted, even as my whole body shook. He didn't say anything right away, just shifted closer, tucking himself against me like it was the most natural thing in the world. His arm slipped around my waist, warm and careful. "Better?" he asked softly. I nodded even though he couldn't see it in the dark. "Yeah, better." He let out a small, satisfied hum and rested his head back on my chest. The shaking eased little by little, replaced by the steady warmth of him and the quiet rhythm of the house. Neither of us spoke after that. We didn't need to. I woke just before dawn. The room was washed in a pale gray light and I felt a heavy weight pressed against me. For a second, panic flickered, then I realized what it was. I was terrified. It was my father sleeping in my bed. Terrence had shared my mattress every night before my move to LA, when Talia was gone during her travels and pediatric charity events, leaving me to the wiles of my father's perversions and secrets. Noah was half sprawled across me, fast asleep, his breathing slow and even. He was warm, solid, completely unaware, like he'd drifted there sometime in the night and never bothered to leave. I lay still, afraid that if I moved, he'd wake. The house was silent, the kind of silence that only exists right before morning. His head rose and fell against my chest, steady and calm. I stared at the ceiling and listened to him breathe, wondering how something could feel so heavy and so quiet at the same time. I carefully pulled the blanket up to his chin, tucking it around him so he wouldn't wake. Then I shifted just enough to snuggle closer, fitting myself against him like that was where I was supposed to be. We were spooning, there was no space between us as I relaxed into his smaller, more compact form. My heart was still racing, loud in my ears, but I focused on his breathing instead, slow, steady, peaceful. Little by little I matched it, letting the warmth and the quiet do their work. Sleeping beside Noah isn't intimacy the way people understand it. It isn't desire, it isn't romance, it's a regulation, it's grounding, it's the only way my mind ever truly shuts off. With him there I don't have to perform or explain or guard myself, I can exist. He's a warm little toaster oven warming my bones and guts every night. He doesn't move during the night, leave my room, or sleep on me. The first time I had sex with a girl I was 13. It was a week after I told my ex-fiancé I no longer wanted anything to do with him. I met Lucy from my school. She was a girl in my junior high class and we did the deed in her bedroom. Nothing about it changes me, nothing about it scratches the place Noah occupies in my life. I don't stay, I don't linger. I wait until she falls asleep, then slip out quietly in the dark, returning to the bed where someone is waiting for me. I am forbidden from loving Noah. That is what my father told me, though the words never arrived like something gentle or negotiable. They came as rules due in our house, final, heavy, and already decided long before I had any understanding of what I was being asked to give up. He spoke as if love were a direction I could turn off inside myself, as if it were a habit I might break if I were disciplined enough. Terrence allowed me to have sentiment for Noe if it kept me loyal and desperate to protect the blonde from my father's evil behavior. My father allowed Jay to be around me to control how I reacted to the truths of the Blue family. I learned to carry the idea of Noah in silence. I swore things I did not fully understand how to keep. I told my father I would not love him, because love, if it was even that, was treated like a threat, like something that could undo the future I was supposed to be building to carry on the Blue family tree. Like something that could ruin the narrow path laid out for me, the one meant to lead me away from my family without actually letting me belong anywhere else. But Noah was already there. From 1972 to 1976, I used Noah for my comfort, needs, and selfish reasons. Noah was simply part of my life in the way certain people become part of a child's world without permission or introduction. He was not an idea then, he was not a warning. He was just present, familiar, constant, and terribly unavoidable. The blonde rascal who existed in the same small universe I did, where days were measured in proximity rather than meaning. I was 8 years old when I realized what I called it, though even then the word love did not sit right in my mouth. It was something quieter than that, something more ordinary and more consuming at the same time. Platonically, I told myself later, as if that word could neatly contain everything I didn't know how to explain. It was an attachment. It was certain. It was the feeling that someone else's existence made my own feel less unsteady. We shared space the way children do, without ceremony or ownership. My life bled into his in small, unremarkable ways. Floors, rooms, afternoons that stretched too long to be remembered clearly. Sometimes even the same mattress, the same exhausted endings to the same unfinished days. There was no declaration of importance, and yet everything about it felt important in a way I could not yet articulate. And still, beneath all of it, there was the pressure of what I had been told. Loving Noah and knowing, choosing and standing by it was not just a feeling but an act of defiance for my family. Noah was good for me, and my love for him was deliberate. Something capable of breaking the structure of the life I was expected to step into on my 18th birthday as Terrence's heir. My father made it sound like choosing Noe would cause consequences that were immediate and inevitable, as if emotions themselves could be punished if they crossed invisible boundaries. So I learned to separate things. Noah existed in one place, real, close, and unavoidable. And the idea of loving Noah existed in another, forbidden, dangerous, always being watched for. Even as a child, I carried that separation without understanding how unnatural it was. I did not yet know that children are not supposed to negotiate with their own attachment, or that love, whatever form it takes at 8 years old, does not usually come with consequences written by someone else's fears. What I knew instead was that something in me reached toward him and something outside me pulled back. And between those two forces I learned to live quietly. Tate noticed before he understood it. The way his pulse would shift the second Noah entered the room, not gradually, not something he could ease into, but immediate, sharp, like a switch had been flipped somewhere deep in his body. 1 second he was fine, steady, detached from everything around him. And the next, his heart was beating too fast, too loud, like it was trying to get ahead of something he couldn't even see. And once it started, it didn't stop. It built. His breathing followed, heavier, louder than he meant it to be, not quite panic, not quite control either, just this constant need for more air, like his body had decided Noah's presence required something different from him, something more alert, more alive. Tate hated that he couldn't hide it completely. Because Noah didn't even have to do anything, he just had to exist. Jay noticed how Tate reacted to Noah's body and presence in his life and physical proximity. The second Noah walked into a room, Tate lost everything else. Conversations blurred into noise, people stopped mattering, whatever he had been thinking about. Gone. It didn't matter how important it had seemed a second ago, it didn't matter who was talking to him. None of it held, not when Noah was there, and it wasn't a choice. That was the part Tate couldn't explain. It was instinct, immediate, absolute, like something in him locked on and refused to let go. If Noah so much as looked over at him even for a second, it was worse. Tate felt it like a physical thing, his chest tightening, his focus snapping into place so completely it was almost disorienting. Like the entire room dimmed and sharpened at the same time, everything faded except for him. It reminded Tate of something animal, not in a violent way, not hunger, not threat, but awareness. Like a lion spotting movement in the distance, not because it wants to destroy it, but because it can't ignore it, because something about it demands attention on a level deeper than thought. Except Tate didn't want to chase Noah. He didn't want to consume him, he just needed to be near him. That was the only way it made sense. Proximity settled something in him, even if it made everything else worse. Even if his pulse still raced, even if his breathing never fully evened out, being close at least gave his body somewhere to put all of it, and when he wasn't close that was worse. Because then he noticed everything, every small movement Noah made. The way his nose crinkled slightly when he reacted to something without thinking. The quiet sniff he did sometimes like he didn't even realize it. The way his knee bounced when he got nervous, fast and restless, as energy had nowhere else to go. Tate tracked it all without meaning to, filed it away without trying. And especially he noticed when Noah was afraid, or shy. Something about that shifted everything inside him even more, made his focus sharpen, his breathing deepen, and his body lean instinctively closer before he could stop himself, not to overwhelm him, not to push. But to be there, to close the distance, to make sure nothing else did. Tate didn't need people. He had always known that about himself. Crowds didn't matter. Attention didn't matter. Connection, for the most part, had always felt optional, transactional, or something he could take or leave without consequence. Until Noah. Because around Noah, none of that was true anymore. Around him, Tate's body reacted first and left him to figure it out after. His pulse is too fast, his breathing is too loud, his focus is too sharp, like something in him had decided without permission that this mattered. I was around the age of 13 when I noticed how my pulse spiked when Noah was there. I couldn't help it. He was the most attractive person I've ever seen. His blonde hair, blue eyes, and lean, skinny body without muscles made me feel warm, wanted, and safe. He looked like an 8-year-old cute kid. He never really grew out of it. Even at the age of 29, he had the body of a teenager. There was something about his body that made me want to be on it, behind it, or near it. Noah's body calmed my anxiety and my fears. I had to touch it. I just didn't touch it in the way adults in my life gossip about. My elementary school days were spent riding the bus with Noah, our hands locked together like it was the most natural thing in the world. The bus was too big, too loud, too full of bodies that didn't care where their elbows landed or whose fear they trampled over. Noah hated it. He always did. I think the size of it got to him, the way it swallowed kids whole, the way there was nowhere to hide once you stepped inside. The bullies didn't help. They learned quickly that the bus was a place without witnesses, a place where teachers weren't listening and adults looked the other way. They shoved him, mocked him, whispered things meant to stick. I watched it happen, felt his hand tighten in mine every time someone passed too close or laughed too loud. So I held on, every morning, every afternoon. I made sure he sat by the window and I took the aisle. I learned which kids to stare down, which ones to block with my shoulder, and which ones would back off if I didn't blink first. Noah stayed quiet, eyes forward, fingers curled into mine like that was the only solid thing in a moving, hostile world. People noticed, of course they did. Kids always notice anything that doesn't fit neatly into their rules. They whispered, pointed, and laughed. Let them. Holding his hand wasn't about what it looked like. It was about keeping him steady, about letting him know that as long as I was there, no one was getting to him without going through me first. Those bus rides taught me something early. Noah didn't need speeches or promises. He needed proximity. He needed someone willing to stay put, to be visible, to take up space so he didn't have to. I understood that instinctively even then. I never let go. When Noah was 7, the bus stopped being just loud and frightening. It became dangerous. I heard it before I fully saw it. A mean bully named Max was targeting Noe. Max's laugh, too loud, too pleased with itself, always made Noe flinch. One afternoon after school, Max and a few of his cronies tried to hold Noe down on the bus to bully the small blonde runt. "Hold him still," Max said, "he's shaking." Noah was boxed in, 3 of them crowding him, hands clamped onto his shoulders. They shook him hard back and forth like he was something loose they were trying to break. Noah didn't scream, he didn't even cry. He just went rigid, eyes glassy, mouth slightly open like his body had checked out before his mind could catch up. "Hey," I said, my voice sounded small even to me, "leave him alone." Max turned, grinning. "What are you gonna do about it?" That was it, I didn't answer. I stood up in my seat on the bus and kicked him as hard as I could between the legs. Max made a sound I didn't know a person could make, air tearing out of him as he folded and dropped, face slamming into the aisle. Someone yelled, someone else laughed. The bus driver shouted something I couldn't hear over the pounding in my ears. I was already next to Noah. "Hey," I said again, softer now, "you're okay, I've got you." He nodded, but his hand trembled when I took it. By the time we got to school, his eye was already darkening, swelling fast. I found ice in the cafeteria at school and applied a cold cloth to the bruised area. I kissed the bruise, trying to make my friend feel better. A teacher crouched in front of us. "Noah, what happened?" Noah didn't answer, he just looked at me. A few days later, Max tried to play tough, wiping his nose, laughing too hard with his friends. "Your boyfriend kicks like a girl," he said. I stepped forward before Noah could. His voice was quiet, flat. "Touch me again," I said, "and I'll break your finger." Max blinked. "What?" "I'll break it," I repeated, holding up his hand like he was measuring which finger to start with. Slow. The bus went quiet. Max scoffed, but he took a step back. "You're crazy." "Maybe," I said, "try me." Max never touched him again. I stayed close after that, always an aisle seat, always watching, always ready. Noah leaned into me like he trusted gravity to work differently when I was there. I learned something early. Noah didn't need noise, he didn't need speeches or comfort lies. He needed certainty, he needed someone who would act without asking permission. So I did, every time. Right before Christmas break that year it happened again. I heard the metal first, the dull clang of Noah's back hitting the lockers. I turned just in time to see Sam crowding him, one arm braced beside Noah's head, the other gripping his wrist hard enough that Noah winced. "Bet you play piano with these," Sam said, shaking Noah's hand for emphasis. "Be a shame if something happened to him." Noah's face had gone pale. I could see him trying to stay upright, trying not to show how much it hurt. Later, I'd find the bruises along his ribs already blooming dark beneath his shirt. "Let go," Noah said. His voice didn't shake, but his breath did. Sam leaned closer. "Or what? I shut him in this locker and see how many you've got left." I didn't announce myself. I didn't warn him. I walked up behind Sam, grabbed his left hand and slammed it into the metal locker as hard as I could. The sound cracked down the hallway, sharp and final. Sam screamed and dropped to his knees, clutching his hand to his chest. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he yelled, his face twisted, eyes wet. I leaned down just enough for him to hear me. "You touch him again," I said quietly. "And that'll be the least of it." A teacher came running then, shouting questions, demanding names. Sam was still crying, rocking back and forth. Noah stood frozen, one hand pressed to his side, staring at me like he couldn't quite believe I was real. Later, when we were alone, he said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," I said, "I did." He didn't argue, he just nodded and let me walk him home, leaning into me a little more than usual, like his body remembered before his mind could. Sam never went near him again. Christmas came. School let out. The world pretended everything was fine, but I remembered the sound of metal on bone and I filed it away like everything else, proof that I'd always know what to do when someone thought Noah was small enough to hurt. Christmas that year was loud and full and bright in all the ways it was supposed to be. Family flew in from Los Angeles. Aunts, uncles, voices overlapping, plates clinking, the house crowded with warmth and movement while I wrapped my arms around Noah, pulling the blonde clothes while my abusers were around, terrifying me with their presence. Wrapping paper piled up fast, new toys everywhere. Noah stayed over, sitting cross-legged on the floor with me, opening boxes, figuring things out faster than I did, smiling in that way that made the room feel steadier just by existing. I wished it would snow. I don't know why that mattered so much to me then. Southern California isn't known for snowfall in December, I knew that. Still, I kept looking out the window like I might catch the impossible if I stared hard enough. By the afternoon, the noise started to press in on me, the laughter, the questions, the way everyone kept telling me how lucky I was. I slipped away to the living room couch and sat there, staring at the blank TV screen, feeling hollow for reasons I didn't yet have words for. Noah noticed. He always did. He climbed up onto the couch beside me, knees digging into the cushions, then turned and crawled closer until he was right in my space. He studied my face the way he studied puzzles, quiet, intent. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," I said automatically. He didn't move away. He climbed onto his knees and leaned closer, his hands braced on either side of my legs. "That's nothing." I shrugged. "I just feel weird." "Like sick?" he asked, eyes widening. "No, just sad." He thought about that, then he sat down next to me and pressed his shoulder into mine like he was anchoring us together. "Is it because it didn't snow?" I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself. "Yeah," I said, "I guess." He frowned at the window. "I thought Christmas was supposed to be special." "It is," I said. "Then why do you look like that?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how to explain the weight in my chest, the sense that something important was missing even though everything looked right. I was too young to understand it, but old enough to feel it. Jay wasn't there that Christmas, because he was at school in Europe, finishing high school and touring the campuses of schools to begin college in the fall of 1976. I missed his presence and used Noah to feel better about the absence of my lover during the holidays. Noah shifted, then climbed fully into my lap without asking. He curled there like it was the most natural place in the world, his arms wrapping around my neck, his forehead pressed against my collarbone. "If it helps," he said quietly, "I'm having a good Christmas." "Yeah?" I asked. "Yeah, 'cause I'm here." Something cracked then, just a little, enough to let the ache breathe. I wrapped my arms around him, held him closer than I meant to. He fit perfectly, too perfectly for it to be a coincidence. My breathing slowed, the noise in the house faded. "I don't want you to be sad," he said, muffled against my shirt. "I'm okay," I told him, and for the first time that day it was true. He pulled back and looked at me seriously. "If you're sad again," he said, "you can tell me, even if you don't know why." I nodded, "Okay." He smiled, then small, certain, and laid his head against my chest like he'd solved something important. I rested my chin on his hair and stared out the window again. It still didn't snow, but the quiet came back, and for the first time I understood something without knowing how to name it. Whatever I was missing, Noah filled it just by staying. After the first sleepover when we were 4, I convinced my mom to have Noah overnight 7 days a week. Noah missed no less than 3 nights with me during our childhood. I loved my buddy for never letting me sleep alone in that creaky, big room with 4 intimidating walls. When we were 7 years old, one day in March, Uncle Joey stuck his head into the living room and jingled his keys. "Ice cream in town," he said. "Anyone want to come?" "Yes," I answered immediately. I didn't even look back. I just reached down and grabbed Noah's hand, tugging him up with me like it was already decided. Noah stumbled, laughed, then went with it. Joey paused at the door, eyebrows lifting when he realized Noah was coming too. "Oh, he said, glancing between us, then he shrugged. "Sure, hop in." We climbed into his red pickup truck. I slid into the middle seat like I always did. Noah took the passenger side, kneeling on the seat so he could peer over the dashboard, his hands braced against it, eyes wide like the windshield was a movie screen. Joey started the engine. "Seatbelt," he reminded. Noah fumbled with it, still staring out. "It's really flat," he said. I smiled. "That's because it's not LA." He turned to me. "What's it like outside of Los Angeles?" Quieter, I said after a second, smaller towns and little houses. How small? Joey thought about it. Like fewer people who care what you're doing, Joey chuckled. That's one way to put it. Noah looked back out the window as we drove, watching the houses thin out, the lights stretching farther apart. Do they still have palm trees? I smiled at Joey. Some places, Joey said, other places have snow. His head snapped toward me. Real snow. Yeah, like you can pick it up. He went quiet, clearly picturing it. Does it make everything quiet? I nodded. Yeah, really quiet. That sounds nice, he said softly. Joey glanced at us in the rearview mirror. You ever been out of state, Noah? Noah shook his head. No, sir. Well, Joey said, easing the truck down the road, there's a whole lot out there. Noah leaned closer to the windshield like he was trying to see past the town, past the road, past Southern California entirely. Then, without looking at me, he asked, would you still sit in the middle? Always, I said. He nodded like that settled something. His shoulder brushed mine when he finally sat back and he didn't move away. The red pickup truck hummed, the road stretched ahead, and for a few quiet minutes it felt like the world was bigger but safer too because we were moving through it together. We both got cones. I chose chocolate without thinking. Noah picked vanilla, studying the menu as the decision mattered more than it probably ever did at home. The cones were dipped in chocolate, the shell still glossy and hard when they handed them over. Noah stared at his for a second like he was making sure it was real, then he took the smallest lick I'd ever seen, careful, precise, like if he rushed it, it might disappear. I noticed right away how slow he was eating, not messy, not as excited as kids usually are, just deliberate. He turned the cone a little between each bite, making sure it didn't drip, making it last. I didn't say anything, but something tight pulled in my chest. It hit me then, he probably didn't get treats like this much. Noe learned early that sweet things ran out fast. You don't have to save it, silly, I said quietly. Noah looked at me confused. I'm not. Then he smiled, not big, not showy, just soft, like this right here was enough. Uncle Joey paid and wandered over to the newspaper stand by the creamery, flipping a coin into the slot and pulling out a paper. You boys take your time, he said, already half lost in the headlines. Noah finished his cone down to the very edge, chocolate shell cracked just enough to bite clean through. He licked his fingers, then wiped them on a napkin he'd folded into neat squares. When he was done, he leaned into my side without asking. Did you like it? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, it was really good. That was all he said, but he kept smiling. The drive home was quiet. The sugar must have caught up to him because somewhere between the creamery and our street, Noah shifted closer and rested his head against my chest. At first I thought he was just leaning, then his breathing changed slower, deeper, out cold. I didn't move, I barely breathed. Joey glanced at us in the mirror and softened. He turned the radio down without being asked. He's really out of it, Joey laughed. Noah slept the whole way back until we drove through the school district. Noah's forehead tucked under my chin, his body trusting mine completely. I watched the streetlights pass and thought absently, fiercely, that this was what peace felt like. Not loud, not exciting, just warm weight, steady breath, and the quiet certainty that someone had chosen to stay. When we pulled into the driveway, I still didn't wake him. I just held him there a second longer, memorizing it, already knowing I'd spend the rest of my life chasing that exact feeling again. I noticed a shift in Noah after his 9th birthday. The summer faded into fall, carrying us into a new rhythm. It was 1977, and Star Wars had completely taken over his world. Lightsabers, spaceships, and action figures littered his room, all meticulously arranged. We'd made plans to dress up for Halloween in a few months. He'd be Darth Vader and I'd be Luke Skywalker. We talked about it endlessly, mapping out battles and choreographing imaginary duels. My stuffed animals littered my room, taking up space, and sometimes Mom or Uncle Joey tripped over them. Honey, Mom would say, why does Noah turn your stuffed animals backwards sometimes? Noah plays with them when he's here, I lied to Mom. I turned my stuffed animals backwards for years as a younger kid to hide the fact that my family sexually abused me as a toddler. Noe played with my plushies, and it felt weird if they saw what happened to me and stared at Noe too. Noah acted differently over the next few weeks. Something had changed. He was different, absent-minded, lost in thoughts I couldn't follow. He smiled for no reason, sometimes blushed so hard his ears turned pink, and his laughter was softer, like he was letting it out in secret. I frowned one afternoon as we walked home. "Mom," I asked, tugging at Talia's sleeve, "why is Noah acting weird?" Talia tilted her head, studying us as we navigated the sidewalk. "Weird how?" He's blushing all the time and he keeps smiling, but like, not at me, or maybe at me, I don't know, it's confusing." Talia smiled, a hint of knowing and a hint of sadness. "Oh, Tate, that's because Noah is in love." "In love," I repeated, confused. "What does that mean?" Her expression softened. She crouched slightly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "It's when you like someone so much that you think about them all the time, when seeing them makes your heart feel funny, and when you miss them if they're not around." I wrinkled my nose. "Heart, love." "Yes," she said, nodding patiently. "It's not something you can see or touch, but it changes the way you feel about someone, makes little things about them feel big." I looked at Noah, who was a few steps ahead, tugging on his backpack straps absent-mindedly, a tiny smile hidden in his blonde hair. His fingers brushed the edge of the fence as we passed, like he was tracing a path only he could see. "So, he's in love with someone?" I asked, still unsure. Talia hesitated, choosing her words. "Yes, but you don't have to understand it all right now, just notice him, be kind, give him space to feel it, and don't make it confusing for him." I frowned. "Kind space, Mom, I don't get it. Does it mean I can't like him too?" She reached down and squeezed my hand. "You're allowed to like him, Tate, but love, it's complicated, people feel it in different ways." I didn't say anything after that, just watched Noah from behind, the sunlight catching in his hair, the blush still visible on his cheeks. I didn't understand it, not really, but something had shifted, and I knew, even without words, that this change in him mattered. He was different now, and somehow, it made me feel responsible, more than I had before, like I had to keep an eye on him even closer than I already did. I couldn't help but wonder, which girl did Noah like? Did I know her? Did she live nearby? Would she ruin things? I worried quietly, obsessively, that this crush might somehow rock our little arrangement, our plans to sleep side by side, our routines that I'd built around him. I waited until that evening to ask Mom, sitting on the couch while she sipped her tea. "Mom," I said carefully, do you know which girl Noah likes?" She smiled faintly, not looking up. "No, Tate, he hasn't told anyone yet." I frowned. "So it's a secret?" "Yes," she set her cup down. "Sometimes it takes time to tell someone, and sometimes you don't even tell them at all." I chewed on that, uncertain. "Mom, is that like unrequited love?" She glanced at me, surprised I knew the phrase. "Yes," she said softly, "that's when you like someone but they don't feel the same way, or maybe they don't even know you love them. It can feel lonely sometimes." I nodded, feeling a little tight in my chest. Lonely, I knew that word. I'd seen it in Noah's eyes more than once, and I felt it now, imagining him quiet, blushing, thinking of someone else who might not even notice. "I feel bad for him," I said, almost whispering. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's okay to feel that way, Tate, but remember, liking someone, even quietly, is part of growing up. You just be there for him in your own way." I nodded again, but my mind was already racing. Being there for him, always, that part I understood, that part I could control. Noah would never tell me, maybe he never would, but I could watch over him. I could hold our routines, our little world. I could make sure nothing else, no crush, no heartbreak, no change ever disrupted what mattered most. And I would, always. "Noah, who do you love?" I asked one afternoon, the words tumbling out before I could stop myself. He froze, his blonde hair fell over his forehead, hiding his eyes, but I could see his shoulders tense. His face turned bright red, hot, unstoppable. He stared at the ground, silent. 10 minutes later, still crouched on the floor beside me, he mumbled, almost to himself, "It's stupid, you'll laugh at me," he whispered, voice cracking. "I won't," I said firmly, "I promise." He shook his head, the blush still blazing, and muttered something I didn't catch. Then he stood, brushing his hands on his pants, and walked away as if the subject had never existed. And he never brought it up again. I watched him leave and felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the mix of wanting to know everything about him and knowing some things were his alone. I didn't push, I never did. Some parts of Noah were sacred. There were parts of him I could only guard from afar silently while he kept his secrets tucked tight against his chest. I understood then, even at 8, that some truths weren't mine to unravel. But that didn't stop me from wanting to be near him, from holding onto our routines, our quiet world, our closeness. Whomever he loved, it couldn't touch what we had, and I'd make sure of that. Valentine's Day in 1978, I caught Noah in his room, hunched over a piece of paper. He was scribbling, careful, deliberate, like the world outside didn't exist. "What are you doing?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He jerked, covering the card with both hands. "Nothing," he said, voice tight. "Come on, Noah, I won't tell anyone," I pressed, stepping closer. He shook his head. "It's private, I don't want you to see." I frowned. "It's just a card." He didn't argue, he just held it close to his chest, tilting it away from me, eyes downcast. I knew him too well to push further. Still, I could see it, the intensity in his small frame, the way he paused over the words like they carried the weight of the universe. My buddy, my Noah, had a secret love he wanted to confess, and he was holding it so tightly even from me that not even a whisper escaped. He didn't tell me which girl he liked, and it hurt that Noah didn't trust or feel safe enough around me to tell his secret. Later, on Valentine's Day, I suspected he chickened out and didn't tell the girl his feelings when school ended, and the halls buzzed with the usual gossip and girls traded notes. Nothing, not a single rumor surrounded the blonde I loved about a girl or secret feelings. Not a peek into who had captured Noah's attention. I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief because the world didn't intrude, and frustration because I needed to know him completely and if his feelings for her were a threat to our relationship. But some things were off limits, even to me. Some parts of Noah were his alone. I learned that even then, wanting to protect someone sometimes meant letting them keep secrets, even if it left you in the dark. I kept 3 major secrets from Noah for 25 years, so having any resentment towards Noah for keeping secrets from me was hypocrisy. I watched him from the hallway, small and focused, and felt that quiet, fierce determination. Whatever he chose to hide, I would be there. Always. I had no idea not then that the card he'd made so carefully, so fiercely private was meant for me. I caught him in the hallway after the cards were distributed. He was fidgeting with his sleeve, avoiding my eyes. "Hey, Noah," I said, nudging him lightly. "You okay? You're quiet." He stiffened, glanced at me, then looked down at his shoes. "I'm fine," he muttered. "Didn't you make a card?" I asked, hesitating. "You seemed busy earlier." He swallowed hard. "Yeah, I made one, but it doesn't matter." I frowned. "Doesn't matter? Who was it for?" His face went red, bright red. He shook his head quickly. "No one, really." I pressed a little. "Come on, you can tell me, I won't laugh." He bit his lip and muttered, I couldn't give it." "Why?" I asked, crouching slightly to be closer to him. "It's stupid," he said. "I chickened out, they don't like me back." I didn't know then, I didn't know he meant me. I just felt the tug of something unusual in the air, a tension I couldn't name. I gave him a small smile. I hadn't a clue that Noe had heard my words in the gym when I told the jocks that I liked another girl. Noe thought I loved her and discarded the Valentine in the trash because he knew that loving me was futile. "It's okay, you don't have to," I said. He looked up briefly as if surprised I hadn't pressed harder. "Thanks," he whispered, almost too softly to hear. Over the next 6 months I noticed little things. How he lingered near me, the way he blushed at the smallest things I said, how he seemed happier when I was around. I didn't understand it yet, but that card, the one I never received, had started something. That was when he began falling in love with me quietly, carefully, and secretly, although I didn't know it then. That small abandoned card was the first sign of the bond that would define us for years to come. It happened in the study hall. I was sitting beside Noah, trying to help my buddy calm down after he'd been upset over some forgotten homework. My hand brushed against Noah's, and instinctively I held it, just a small squeeze, a comfort for him as much as for my buddy. That's when I noticed the bully, Evan, watching. He smirked and leaned back in his chair, clearly amused. "What are you doing, Tate?" he asked, loud enough for a few heads to turn. "Holding hands with Noah, you too. What, are you dadding or something?" I didn't answer him, I just tightened my hold on Noah's hand. Noah's face went pink, but he didn't pull away. Later, after the classroom emptied, I leaned close. "Noah, what's going on?" He hesitated, fingers fidgeting in mine. I gave someone a Valentine," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But they didn't notice me. I'm invisible to them." Who? I asked gently. He shook his head, tears brimming. I can't, it doesn't matter. I felt my chest tighten. Without thinking, I pulled him into a hug. It doesn't matter, I said softly, holding him close. It matters to me. He cried into my shoulder, small sobs that shook his little body. I stroked his hair, whispered his name, and let him release all the sadness he'd been carrying. See, I murmured after a while, just holding him. I see you, Noah, always. Nobody's going to make you invisible while I'm here. He sniffled, finally lifting his head. His blue eyes were wet, but there was a small, grateful smile tugging at the corners. Thanks, Tate, he whispered. I wish I'd given it to them. You gave it to me, I said quietly, pressing my forehead to his, and that's enough. That day, in that quiet study hall corner, I realized again just how fragile he could be and how much I would do to protect him, to make sure he was seen, loved, and safe. My 10th birthday in 1978 was finally here. I was packing the living room, trying not to get too restless, but really just waiting for the presents to arrive. Noah had gone shopping with Mom earlier, and I could practically feel him buzzing with excitement somewhere in the stores, picking out something, anything for me. The fridge held a red velvet cake, my favorite, already waiting. I kept sneaking peeks at it while watching some oldie special on TV, half listening to the scratchy music and laughing at the cheesy performances. It didn't matter what was on, I was too busy thinking about the day ahead. Mom had said the party would start at 7 in the evening. Until then, the house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every little sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, feel louder, more alive. When the doorbell rang later, my heart skipped a beat. Presents, visitors, chaos, laughter, but the first thing I wanted always was the cake. I opened the fridge and ran my finger over the smooth, red frosting. I loved it so much I almost forgot to wait for everyone else. When Noah walked in with a bag that rattled suspiciously, I knew the day was going to be perfect. Even in the chaos of birthday parties and gifts and neighbors crowding into the living room, I had that red velvet cake, that silly oldie on the TV, and Noah, my constant, my favorite, my quiet anchor in the middle of it all. And I couldn't wait to eat the cake first, just because I could. Mom and Dad had gone with the usual: books, a model airplane, a set of paints, but Noah's gift was different, personal, thoughtful. He handed me a small, neatly wrapped box. For you, he said, his blue eyes bright but a little nervous. I opened it carefully and found a new guitar pick and a delicate ankle bracelet. My fingers froze over the ankle bracelet. It had tiny letters engraved, "Best buddies forever." Noah, I whispered, my chest tightening, this is, you made this for me. He shook his head, a shy smile tugging at his lips. I didn't make it, I just picked it out at a mall store. I wanted you to have one. I've got one too. He lifted his foot slightly to show the bracelet around his ankle, the letters just as clear. I looked up at him, stunned. We match. Yeah, he said softly, so you'll always know I'm your buddy. I grinned, sliding the bracelet onto my ankle and letting it rest against my skin. I'll always know, I said. I mean, thank you, Noah, really it means a lot. He shrugged, looking a little bashful, but the corners of his mouth curved in a smile. I thought you'd like it. I laughed lightly, bumping his shoulder. Like it? I love it. You didn't have to, you know. I wanted to, he said quietly. You're my favorite person in the whole world, Tay. And that was it, nothing more needed to be said. The ankle bracelet was small, the guitar pick simple, but the meaning behind it, everything. Even at 10 I understood. Noah was giving me a piece of himself, a quiet promise, and I knew as I slipped the ankle bracelet onto my ankle that I'd treasure it and him forever. Noah didn't need to give me gifts. I looked at the bracelet on my ankle, the guitar picks in my palm, and felt something quiet settle in my chest. Those things were nice, sure, but they weren't the gift. The real gift was him. Just sleeping next to Noah at night, that was everything. The steady warmth of another body beside mine, the rhythm of his breathing, the way the world seemed to go silent once he was there, and that was the most wonderful thing I could ever imagine being given. No wrapping paper, no occasion, just presence. I never needed him to say anything or do anything special. I didn't need proof. I didn't need declarations. I just needed him there, close enough that the dark didn't feel so big, close enough that my thoughts stopped racing. I remember thinking, even at 10, that nothing anyone could ever hand me would compare to that quiet certainty. The calm, the safety, the knowledge that when the lights went out, Noah would be there and the night would pass gently. That night, when the house finally went quiet and the lights were off, I reached out and pulled Noah into our bed beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. He settled against me without a word. I leaned over and kissed his temple, quick, absent-minded, the way you do when something feels safe and already yours. I loved your gifts, I told him quietly, both of them. He smiled into the pillow, his shoulders relaxing as the day had finally caught up to him. After a second, I added, almost casually, would you like me to teach you how to play the guitar Joey gave me from his travels to Peru? Noah lifted his head and nodded, eyes bright. He didn't even hesitate. It's really easy to learn, I said, already picturing it. You know that old classical guitar upstairs, the one you keep staring at like it might run away. Noah blushed. I wasn't staring. I laughed softly. You were, and that one's perfect. Nylon strings won't hurt your fingers, it's the best one to learn on. He scooted closer as the decision had already been made. Okay, he said, will you show me tomorrow? Yeah, I promised, tomorrow. He curled in against me again, warm and trusting, and before I finished thinking about chords or notes or anything else, his breathing evened out. I lay there awake a little longer listening, knowing without having words for it that this was the real gift, not the bracelet, not the pick. Just this. I didn't mind that the weather in Colorado grounded planes and kept my uncles and aunts from visiting on my 12th birthday. Their absence barely registered. Sure, a part of me had imagined the house buzzing with their voices, the clatter of presents, or the chaos of a proper party, but none of that mattered. As long as Noah was here beside me, tucked into the bed with his small body pressed against mine, keeping me warm, I was happy. That was enough, more than enough. The rain tapped softly against the window, the night outside stretched dark and endless, but inside, in the quiet cocoon of blankets and pillows, everything felt perfect. I could feel Noah's steady warmth, his small breaths rising and falling. I didn't need conversation, laughter, or fanfare, just him. That night I realized again that birthdays or any day really meant nothing compared to this. Noah is beside me, safe, quiet, constant. I closed my eyes and let the world shrink to that single, perfect truth. In the spring of 1979, the older kids had decided I was their lucky target. I could feel their eyes following me across the playground, their sneers ready to land at the slightest misstep. Noah stayed close to me, closer than usual. He tucked himself just behind me like a shadow, small and wiry, and I felt the weight of his trust as I squared my shoulders. Go on, hit me, I shouted at one of the bigger kids, fists ready. Try it, you're not scaring him. I nodded toward Noah, who peeked out from behind me, his face set but trembling slightly. The bully hesitated and I shoved hard, forcing him back a step. Noah squeaked, Tate, be careful. I got him, I said, spinning to keep the pressure on, my hands ready. I'm not letting anyone touch you, Noah, not ever. He nodded, a blush creeping across his cheeks. Thanks, I knew you'd protect me. I protected Noe from bullies and rude girls at school, because my blonde buddy had protected me unknowingly from Terrence and my abusive family for many years since we met. By the time the bell rang, the older kids had slinked away, muttering, and I held Noah's hand as we walked toward the bike racks. Come on, let's go to the cinema, I said, already unlocking my bike. He grinned, hopping onto the back wheel like he always did. Don't wobble. I won't, I said, pedaling hard, feeling the wind against my face. You ready for the new sci-fi one? Noah loves space movies, I teased. Don't tell anyone, but you're obsessed with spaceships. Shut up, he shouted, laughing, holding tight. I am not. People in town noticed us, of course. The way we clung to each other, hand in hand, him balancing on the back wheel while my thighs kept him from falling off my back wheel. The whispers started almost immediately. Look at those two, weird, huh? They're close, too close, maybe. His parents are nuts for allowing these fairies to shame them in town. Does Terrence Blue know his son is a fag? I heard them but ignored them. I didn't care. Let them gossip. They didn't understand. They didn't see what I saw, the trust, the closeness, the unspoken bond. When we reached the cinema, Noah jumped down, brushing imaginary dust off his pants. Tate, you know that people think we're weird. Maybe, I said casually, hiding the protective surge behind a grin. But who cares, we're having fun, that's all that matters. He looked at me, eyes bright, and smiled, like he understood even if he didn't fully say it. And in that moment, as we bought our tickets and queued for popcorn, the world could whisper whatever it wanted. We had each other, always. The cinema was quiet, almost empty, the soft hum of the projector filling the room. Noah clutched his small popcorn bucket like it was a shield, eyes wide as the movie rolled on the screen. When a particularly scary part came up, a monster lunging out of the shadows or a space creature attacking a scientist, he buried his face in his hands. "Hey," I whispered, leaning closer. "You want to sit here instead?" I patted the space between my legs, arms open. "I can hug you while we watch." He peeked through his fingers, unsure. You don't mind." "Mind, of course not," I said, smiling. "Come on, I got you." He shuffled over, settling between my legs, his back pressed to my chest. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. His small hands relaxed, finally letting go of his popcorn shield. "You feel better?" I asked, nuzzling the top of his head. A small nod. "Yeah, thanks, Tate." "You don't have to hide," I murmured. "I've got you, always." He sighed, the tension leaving his shoulders. "You're really good at this," he whispered, leaning further into me. I chuckled softly. "It's easy, you're easy to protect. No evil space creature will get my Noe while I protect you." For the rest of the movie, he stayed nestled between my legs. He peeked out from time to time, eyes still wide but not panicked. And when the final credits rolled, I felt that quiet satisfaction again, the knowledge that he trusted me completely, and that for these 2 hours at least the world couldn't touch him. Noah smiled up at me. "Tate, you always make scary stuff not so scary." "I know," I said, hugging him a little tighter. "That's my job." And it was, always. Girls giggled when I walked down the hallway. 11 years old, dark hair, hazel eyes, and a smile that made them whisper, handsome or attractive, if I dared to admit it. I had wider shoulders than most boys my age and stood at least half a foot taller than Noah. Noah, by contrast, was smaller, skinnier, and looked like a nerd if you ignored the glasses he didn't need yet. Without them, he seemed fragile, like a pencil someone could snap with a single finger. The whispers followed us. "Tate's holding Noah's hand again," someone snickered. "Gross," another hissed. I didn't care. I held Noah's hand anyway, tight but careful. I felt his fingers curl against mine, hesitant at first, then firmer, like he was testing if I'd pull away. "You're not going to leave me for them, are you?" Noah whispered, voice low enough for only me to hear. I shook my head, squeezing his hand. "No," I said firmly. "You know I'm not like that. Nobody else matters, Noah, not girls, not anyone. Nothing will come between you and me, except Paris," I thought. He glanced up at me, eyes wide, searching for a truth he didn't fully trust yet. "You promise?" "I promise," I said again, letting my thumb brush across his knuckles. "I don't care who's starring, who's whispering, you're my person, always." He exhaled slowly, leaning a little closer, and I felt the weight of his trust settle over me. It was fragile, delicate, but absolute. "Good," he murmured, "'cause I'd be lost without you." I laughed softly, the corners of my mouth tugging up. "You're never going to be lost, not while I'm around." And in that crowded hallway, full of laughter, whispers, and judgment, I realized something simple. It didn't matter what anyone thought. Not a single person in this school could understand what we had, and that was fine. They didn't need to. I just needed him, and he needed me. That was enough. Noah was insecure, painfully so, and I knew it. Every nervous glance, every hesitation, every little flinch told me he needed reassurance. So I doubled and then tripled my daily physical touches. A hand on his shoulder in the cafeteria, a squeeze of his hand in the hall, an arm around his waist when the older kids were near. It earned us merciless teasing. The words cut through the air like knives. "Fag," some jerk yelled from the bleachers. "Poofer," another shrieked, pointing at Noah. I didn't even think. I shoved, swung, and punched the first one who opened his mouth to throw a slur. Blood, surprise, and a quick silence followed. No one dared repeat it around me, and I made sure of it. Noah clung to me in the aftermath, holding tight as if afraid the world would start up again the second I looked away. He made sure to never leave my sight while we were walking to the bus, riding bikes through town, or sitting in the library. The bullying became so relentless that one afternoon Noah's mom cornered me after school. Her arms were crossed, worry etched deep in her face. "Tate," she said, her voice firm but trembling slightly, "you've been defending Noah quite a bit. I appreciate it, I do, but I'm worried about the fights. He's fragile, and so are you." I shook my head. "I can handle it. He shouldn't have to deal with them alone. Nobody's going to hurt him if I can stop it." Her eyes softened, but there was still concern. "I know you mean well, but you have to promise me you won't get yourself hurt." "I promise," I said, though I knew my promise was half for her and half for myself. I couldn't leave Noah. She sighed, glancing down at her son, who was hiding a nervous smile behind his hand. He won't go anywhere without you, will he?" "Nope," I said, "and he never will. I've got him." Noah peeked up at me, eyes wide, and whispered, "You always protect me, don't you?" "Always," I said, letting my thumb brush the back of his hand. "Nobody's touching you, not today, not ever." She nodded slowly, satisfied, and walked away, leaving us in the empty hallway. Noah squeezed my hand again, relief written across his face, and I knew as I held him close that I would never let the world bully him ever. The teachers always stared at us, not in a friendly way, not in a cute way. Their eyes lingered on Noah, or on the way he clung to me, the way he sought reassurance, the usual routine when he let himself be comforted. It wasn't me they hated or even questioned, really. It was him, Noah. He was the one making everyone nervous. I made sure I could keep close to him. I paid Timothy McFlaren $100 to swap seats with me so I could sit behind Noah in nearly every class. It was worth it. The other kids were cruel. Any random kid assigned behind him flicked snot at his hair, pinched his shoulders, or shoved him. I didn't care. I couldn't let anyone hurt him. Ever since first grade, I paid a kid to move seats so Noah and I could safely sit together in class so I could protect the blonde from bullies or unkind teachers. Still, it always ended up in the principal's office. This time it was because a kid pinched Noah's thigh during math and I kicked the bully's fingers, and when Mrs. Henderson refused to stop it, I'd lost it. I'd flipped her off. Now here we were, Noah small and scared beside me, the principal and teachers looking ready to pounce. "Tate," Mrs. Henderson started, her voice sharp, icy, "we've been observing your interactions with Noah. While your behavior is noted, it is Noah's actions that are concerning. His clinginess, his constant need for reassurance, his insistence on touching you. This is not appropriate for an 11-year-old. I narrowed my eyes. "Not appropriate, he's scared, that's all. He's a kid, you're blaming him." Mr. Clark leaned forward, voice low, venomous. "Yes, it is Noah who provokes attention. He allows himself to be so close to another student. He seeks comfort in ways that disrupt the classroom. He's creating a situation that is abnormal and potentially harmful to both himself and Tate." Noah shrank into his seat wide-eyed. I'm not." "Quiet," Mrs. Henderson snapped. "Noah, your behavior is the problem here. Your constant need for contact, your inability to maintain boundaries is disruptive to the class. You need to understand that others are noticing. You are making this situation worse, not better." Noah's small hand found mine, trembling. I squeezed it, holding him close. Let them talk, let them judge. He didn't deserve it. Noah's mom stepped in then, her voice tight with worry. "I was informed there was an incident in class. I need to know what happened to my son." Mr. Clark gestured toward Noah, a cruel twist in his voice. "Your son is the issue here. His clinginess toward Tate, his insistence on physical contact throughout the school day, these are not normal behaviors for an 11-year-old boy. His behavior needs to be corrected immediately or this will escalate. Children are noticing, parents are noticing, it's not healthy." Noah's mom's eyes widened. "Not healthy, he's 11, he's small and shy, and you're calling him, what, abnormal?" Mrs. Henderson pressed her thin lips together. "Not abnormal in a criminal sense, ma'am, abnormal in development and social behavior. He allows himself to act in ways that make others uncomfortable. He provokes attention through his clinginess, and Tate's responses, while understandable, are being influenced by Noah." I could feel Noah trembling beside me. I'm scared," he whispered, voice quivering. "I don't want anyone to hurt me." "Yes, exactly," Mrs. Henderson said, ignoring him. "He is creating fear in himself and others. He must learn proper behavior. The classroom cannot function while this continues. Noah, it is your responsibility to maintain an appropriate distance." I felt my jaw tighten. What's wrong with me being this close to Noah? Buddies can hold hands. Why do you weirdos try to make my relationship with Noah romantic or sexual? It's not his fault, I snapped. He's 11, he's scared of cruel bullies, you're blaming him for being a kid, you don't understand him at all. Mr. Clark leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile tugging at his lips. We are simply assessing the root of the issue, and the root is Noah's behavior. Tate reacts to him, yes, but Tate's reactions are normal responses to what Noah provokes. We cannot allow Noah's clinginess to set patterns for other children. Noah's mom's hands tightened around her purse. Patterns? He's just a child, he's scared, he's always scared of the other kids, and you're calling him abnormal for that? Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Henderson said, voice low, firm, and terrifyingly confident. Children must learn to handle fear appropriately. They must not rely on others in ways that disrupt social order. Noah's inability to do so is the problem. My mother shifted uncomfortably. He's not the problem, Tate is just. Your son is not the issue here, Mrs. Henderson interrupted sharply. It's Noah, his fear, his clinginess, his lack of boundaries. If he behaved differently, Tate wouldn't need to respond the way he does. This is Noah's responsibility and it must be corrected immediately. I squeezed Noah's hand again. He looked up at me, eyes wide and scared. I could feel the weight of the judgment in the room, the coldness aimed at him, the adults accusing him of things he didn't understand. He didn't deserve this. Noah whispered, Tate, I'm scared. I know, I said softly, brushing my thumb over the back of his hand. I've got you, always, no matter what they say, no matter what they think, you're fine, I'm here, you don't have to listen to them. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, hands on her hips, eyes sharp. We will involve both sets of parents. Noah, you must understand that your behavior must change immediately. Tate will ensure it does, but the fault lies entirely with you. I glared at her. He's a child, you're blaming him for being scared, you're accusing him of, what, being wrong for being a kid. Mr. Clark shook his head slowly. We are concerned for his social development. He must learn to function in a classroom without drawing inappropriate attention. His clinginess is creating problems for himself and others. Noah pressed his small body closer to mine. I wrapped an arm around him, holding him tight. They can say whatever they want, I whispered. They can blame you, scold you, act like you're the problem. I know the truth, you're fine, I'm here, I won't let them hurt you. Noah exhaled slowly, trusting me enough to lean into me. Even as the teachers glared, as the adults whispered and judged, as my parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, he pressed close. I could feel the raw fragility of his trust in my hands, like glass I had to protect. And I knew, no matter how judgmental, homophobic, or controlling the adults became, Noah didn't need defending from me in words. He needed me physically, emotionally, and constantly to protect his body and safety in a world where teachers couldn't be relied on to break up fights. Noah and I were separated almost immediately following my hand-holding with Noah. I was told to sit in the back of the class, away from him, they said, as if distance could erase what everyone had already seen. He was sent to the opposite side of the lunchroom, expected to sit alone quietly while the other kids whispered and stared. Why do we have to sit here? Noah asked the first morning quietly. His voice was small, almost afraid to be heard. Because they want us to, I said, keeping my voice low. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, the frustration at how unfair it all was. Don't move, just ignore them. He looked down at his tray, silent, fidgeting with his milk carton. The teachers were awkward about it, hovering at the edges of classrooms and hallways, shifting uncomfortably whenever I glanced in their direction. They never knew what to say, only muttering things like, "Boys," being overly familiar. "It's concerning, please, just maintain some distance," Mrs. Henderson said, voice stiff, eyes darting to the floor as if she expected me to break some unspoken rule. They were careful, cautious, and almost disgusted, and it made me want to shout at them all. They thought our closeness was inappropriate. They didn't understand him, didn't understand me, didn't see that nothing else mattered except keeping him safe. Lunch was worse. The cafeteria was loud and echoing, and the older kids didn't miss the chance to pick on him. A group of 3 boys blocked the aisle as he carried his tray. "Hey, Noah," one of them sneered. "Sitting over there all alone, huh? Afraid someone's going to see how you really act with Tate." Noah froze, eyes darting around. I'm fine," he stammered. "Fine, come on," the tallest one said, pushing him lightly against the wall. We know you like him, tell us, admit it, don't be shy. I don't know, whispered, his voice cracked. Come on, we won't tell anyone else, another boy mocked, just say it. I couldn't let them corner him, I stood up and walked to them.